wheelchair ramp is too steep, so when they close off the bridge lake shore, it makes it too hard to access.
What is this group doing to engage all demographics in this issue?
Well, I'm with the Green Party. We're going to the high rises in Parkdale because this is our waterfront, right?
Well, that's the thing.
We'll be able to get here. We'll be on the other side of the wall where the poor people are separated from the paying people.
Well, it has to be more than just like a poor and rich issue. Yeah. Water is something we all need. If you can't convince me to be a water protector, you're not going to convince anyone to protect this lake. So this is where the issue is now rebuilding everyone's relationship to the water, because they bathe in it, they drink it, they feed it to their children. Is it safe for them to come into right now? And this is where we need to reconnect people to the science of water. There are water treatment facilities that allow you to drink clean water. The water as it is right now is not clean. Helping people to make those distinctions and helping them to understand how E. coli gets into their drinking water is really important. I'm a kid that resonates with Walkerton because I remember my parents boiling water because the water wasn't safe to drink. Evoking those memories help people remember the importance of having clean water, because water is everywhere. Is it safe enough to drink? Is it safe enough to bathe in? Those are questions that you can get people to start rallying around, because when you over-intellectualize an issue, you other people. And that's exactly what's happening with this issue. Respectively to for Ontario Place for All, they've othered this issue to be an NDP issue, not us issue.
Oh,
I agree. It has to be larger than just individual, one party kind of thing. And that's the real debate that we're doing here. Why are we thinking that different little parties? The real thing is, why are we selling this when as a city we should be building this into something? And these are very important ideas, and you've expanded this to accessibility for like everyone. Mm-hmm. And money is one way to cut off accessibility. Disabilities are others. You've mentioned a whole bunch of others as well, and that's maybe the real goal that we're trying to do, is make this as accessible to as many people as possible.
Absolutely, and I think this is where reminding people that they have access to the largest resource of fresh water in a time where the world is burning is the message that would really bring people together, because water scarcity is very real. In a nation of immigrants, there's a lot of immigrant communities that grew up with water curfews. Reminding people that this is not just a right, it's a privilege that we have to fight for in order to claim it is really important to water protection, because we are a very inland province. The Atlantic has the Atlantic Ocean that they have at their disposal. BC has the Pacific Ocean. This landlocked piece of water is something worth fighting for, and the only way that we do it is by making sure that everyone has like unbarriered access to the water. That cannot happen if there's a spa from like Austria claiming that this is their land. So helping people to understand that as an Ontarian, a Canadian, this is your birthright and it's worth protecting is the way forward, in my opinion.
That's a good point, because one thing is the spa. Yeah. Well said. The spa is sort of, there's two things wrong with it. One is it's foreign ownership of our water, and the second is it's isolating us from the water. It's not getting more people into the water, because swimmers protect our drinking water by kind of engaging with it, because fish have no rights, and pollution really becomes the alarm when there's a lot of swimmers affected by it. So if the spa got more swimmers in the water, that would be better. But right now it gets less swimmers in the water because they want to ensewage the beach. Destroy, pave over this beach, open up another beach next to the sewer discharge. We were saying they probably want to do that deliberately to ensewage the beach, find the stinkiest, dirtiest spot to put a new beach. Janet Gates, the CEO of Ontario Place, she says there is no beach at Ontario Place. Don't call it a beach.
Well, this is where it's important to bring more communities down here. As a kid that grew up in Rexdale, the Humber River was my water source. And that's something that's being polluted right now after the explosion of the industrial plant in Etobicoke. The water is now unusable, and no one is really raising a stink about it, because we don't think about our ravine systems and our creek systems coming into Lake Ontario. And that's really where the education piece needs to be. How do you connect people from Etobicoke and Scarborough to the lake? we all have access to it, but how many roads allow you to actually engage with it? And that's where these institutions like U of T, like York University, should be filling buses with kids from North York, Etobicoke, and Scarborough, and allowing them to actually get access to the water, because the cost of transportation is prohibitive. If you want people to actually feel connected to this, they have to see it for themselves. But if they can't afford to come down here, you can't expect them to feel the same connection that you do as someone who sees it every day and has everyday access to it.
Yeah. And so Chloe, like during your campaign for mayor, which you did a rock star job, you said you made this statement, like people are tired of political theater and they want to be at the policy table. Mm-hmm. So when I hear you say, about leveraging the law, right, as opposed to, turning this into like a single group or a single source issue, like what's your insight on that? Like to actually get people to the policy table, because we need people from all over the GTA, from every corner, to be able to have input, and that's not the way the current political system's set up.
I would make this a broad issue. Mm-hmm. Water is in everything. It's a culinary issue. It's a construction issue. It's also a sports issue. There's so many sports that we enjoy as Canadians that happen on the water. Yeah. If you love boating, you have to be a part of this issue. So make it so that people don't have a choice but to participate. If you love to be hydrated, this is your issue. Yeah. And the only way that we make it accessible is by breaking down like the over-intellectualization of water systems.
Simplify it down to people.
Yeah. Honestly, my parents are from Jamaica. They grew up around the ocean. They understand the importance of coral reef, even if they're not scientists. Mm-hmm. It's the place where the fish live, and it gives them an ecosystem. Yeah. We have so many resources, but it's become such a convoluted conversation as to whose responsibility is it to protect this water.
Well, this is where you have organizations like you were mentioning, like the Green Building Council. You've got Infrastructure Ontario. You've got the Ontario government. You've got all these bodies, and they seem to all be working towards the same, right? And sort of covering off try to cloud the subject, and they are heavily controlling the media, right? How do we get that?
What if could we draft and suggest policy to put the pollution index right on the water bill, so that was at everybody's doorstep in their mailboxes? That kind of literacy building, like Europe has air pollution index signs in public places, so that we all feel ownership in that, in our part, in what we do to the lake and what happens here publicly. And then, of course, funding within the TDSB policy for that, pushing for programming that connects all kids to our lake. Is it easy or hard to suggest that pollution index and temperature of the lake be published right on the water bill?
I would start smaller than that.
Yeah.
It starts with kids. If you can convince kids this is an important issue, it becomes an important issue for their parents, who actually have the power to vote. And this is where the over-intellectualization of issues is barring people from even engaging, because it's like, I don't even know what the pollution index is, to be completely honest, because I work in policy. I deal with general ideas.
Yeah.
So
when E. coli, say.
And that's the thing.
E. coli is real.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, okay.
If you talk about things that I'm constantly dealing with, E. coli happens with food contamination.
Oh yeah.
If you tell me the water can be contaminated the same way food can be contaminated, you have me. And this is where it's really important to break down the language and break away the gatekeepers of this space. Because the true issue with the spa is the blocking access to what is already yours. Why should you be paying a double fee for something that is yours? And that is where you get people. As a taxpayer, this is a bad investment. If your H&R Block tax accountant was taking your income tax refund and spending it on a project like this, you would have him held for fraud. So you have to frame this issue as if they allow this spa to happen, it's defrauding the public of its own natural resource. Reframe it for as many audiences as possible, because economists worry about this, and this is the blue economy for them.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah.
The spa is fraud. That's if we summarized it in some sense. Like that's a really That's a really strong, that's a great, an interesting way to phrase it or to contextualize it.
Thank you. I tried. But just to get back to the main issue at heart, I think that there's a huge potential to just take the infrastructure around us and readapt it for a Great Lakes Institute. And that institute would focus on water research, protection, and also make sure that more people can get access to the entire lakeshore that spans from Etobicoke to Scarborough. And it would, but what that requires is leveraging the law. So the Great Lakes bilateral agreements that are shared between Michigan, Ontario, and a bunch of the northeastern states should be leveraged. The Great Lakes serves a huge economy, not just for fresh water, but the ecosystems that live in it. And cold coral reef, it's an ecosystem. These are things that can be preserved in order to create more opportunities to sustain life. The spa doesn't sustain life, therefore it's against national interest. We need to be leveraging the national laws that protect us, because this natural resource can dry up and it will lead to greater deaths for Canadians. And the only way that we can fight that is by pretty much using the law to protect us. That's what it's there for. And I can't help but stress, but Minister Stephen Guilbeault is someone who should be constantly confronted about this issue. This is his portfolio. So every time that he's in Toronto, this should be something that's put right in front of him, because as the federal minister who has climate change goals on his agenda, that has a net zero emission mandate, this is one of the greatest ways that he can stop carbon. Having more water, making sure that the water systems are feeding our land systems, because I don't think a lot of people realize, but we have tubes that have hydroelectricity flowing into the city from the lake. There's a lot of opportunities here, but it requires it requires seeing the lake as an active stakeholder in our own existence.
That's an excellent idea. I love that philosophy. Have you ever heard of that tree that owns itself?
Yes.
It kind of reminds, what you're saying kind of reminds me of that, the lake that owns itself.
Exactly.
The lake that has rights.
And that's where we really have to look at the lake and what it offers. It's energy, it offers food, it offers places where people live, because there's a houseboat community that lives on the marina. It's a really big, it's not just real estate, but it's like an active member of our community that needs to be protected and utilized in a way that helps it self-actualize. I don't know what self-actualization is for water, but right now there's this really big opportunity for us to just really look at wastewater, sewage, how that informs research and development of biopharmaceutical products, looking at how our fishing and aviary birds are interacting with the water, because they will tell us the health of the water and the air. So making sure it's a robust system where we're constantly checking in with the water, making sure that it's healthy will make sure that we're healthy. And that's really all of my advice I can give to it. So if you see Stephen Guilbeault, please ask him what he's doing with this Ontario Place and the Ontario Science Centre file, because the Ontario Science Centre can also support climate research. It's a matter of getting laboratories in the existing space and allowing more students to engage with scientists, because there are scientists that live all around the city. We need to give them space to do research and space to have an audience. Science literacy is really lacking in this society, and the only way to build science literacy is to get more scientists speaking to everyday people so that we can dissect our role in the larger ecosystem and economy.
Very well said. Yeah.
So many framings.
Wow. Two things that are really powerful about that. One is the idea of national security. We need to see this as an issue of national security, not just municipal. The second issue is science, because I'm a scientist myself, I do research, I'm a professor. I need a space. I would welcome a space if I could move my lab down to this beach or into one of the pods. I could have a lab in one of the pods. It'd be nice if those of us who do science and water and related issues.
Absolutely, and and that's where it's you have the entire C&E that could be supporting additional readaptive space. Ontario Place plus C&E is one site. These
Yeah.
sites shouldn't be used in isolation. So it's like, even if you had a Great Lakes Institute for research for water here, you could have horticultural buildings at the C&E. So you're creating an entire ecosystem. It's just about how you engage the end user, and the end user is the recreation groups, it's the scientists, it's the community users. So yeah, just get to work on engaging more diverse groups because there's a really big opportunity to recapture this space for public wealth. Because if we own this research space, we're developing wealth for the community at large. It's really just a matter of like us believing that it's ours, as opposed to just letting Doug Ford get away with another crime.
Well, this morning the security guard said I'm not allowed to bring this musical instrument here.
But it's here, isn't it?
It's here. You know, like he said, this is private property. You're not allowed to bring that. And I said, where are hydraulophones prohibited? And I started recording him, and he said, oh, don't record me. And I said, well, if you want to talk to me, it has to be on record.
Well, that's the thing. Like, this is civil disobedience. And a lot of people forget that civil disobedience is a part of their right as citizens of any country, because progress doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens when people break out of their comfort zone and they demand that the world catches up with reality. So I would encourage you to continue like claiming this space is yours, maybe get some bolt cutters and cut a fence, but this government won't know you're serious about saving this space unless you start to do something differently.
I don't know, wouldn't they make us criminals and then just have a reason to cover this up? I would like to point
People
out...
that progress history often find themselves in jail.
Yeah, that's true, but...
They need friends to bail them out, and that's where it's like, pick someone.
Yeah.
Make it a rotating cast of like, hey, this week I cut the chains, next week you cut them. Have a bail fund, because honestly, activists have been the people putting their bodies on the line to advance the actual conversation about climate change in the face of economic denial.
If we're absolutely not being heard, then yeah, I understand that. But I love how you give so many different ways to expand this to many like circles of thought. And you made them important in numerous ways. And it made me realize that this is really the start of a precedent for many different things that us as a society should be thinking about, whether it's nature, whether it's, because it starts like, do we start charging for all these things now? In Hawaii, all the shores have to be exposed, so are we getting rid of that already?
You mean the law in Hawaii, I think, is that it's up to the high water mark is public?
Something like that.
And Hawaii is a great example as to why we need to start protecting our water sources. Hawaii is surrounded by water. There wasn't enough to put out the fire. What happens to a place like this? We've had wildfires all across Canada. If we don't have enough water to put out the fires and then regrow the vegetation, what chance do we have of survival? So this becomes not only like an emergency management issue, it's a regeneration issue, because water is life. If we don't have water, what do we do? There's not enough desalination machines in the world to desalinate the ocean. So we have to be intelligent about this, but also inclusive, because honestly, I know a lot of communities in Toronto that don't access the water because of rumors we heard growing up about what's in the water.
Yeah.
Yeah. In a way, it's a matter of national security, as you point out.
Here's a piece of news towards that. Stephen Guilbeault did just update CEPA, Canadian Environmental Protection Act, after 20 years. So we should leverage that, like ChloeBrown suggesting that we engage the law, because we got to substantiate everybody's human right to a clean environment. And to the credit of these groups that do proselytize about modernism and style and heritage, they are answering the call to adopt a tree. I know Ontario Place for All will be engaging in Adopt a Tree campaign where we share chain breaking, and so that answers culturally a lot of traditions in protecting trees which exist in Parkdale and the Tibetan community, so hopefully we can get that around, but putting yourself on the line is also tricky, I'm sure. Yeah.
I would push the Ontario NDP to push their federal counterparts
You mean
who
Norm?
have push Norm to get the Ontario NDP, who have a coalition with the federal Liberal Party, to expedite this.
Okay.
What use is any of them sitting in office if they cannot expedite the things that matter here?
Yeah, use SEPA.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we got to put pressure on Norm then to really get down to business on this.
Not just Norm, the entire NDP party. They're happily
Olivia.
sitting in
Like
second place
Chris Glover?
doing nothing. Chris
Olivia.
Glover,
Olivia
Asuma,
Chow.
everyone at every level of the NDP. They have these coalitions, but they're not using them to serve the working class.
Oh,
What is
interesting.
the point of them spending their political capital to court Liberals if they're not going to do it to help us? So it's really a matter of like showing up at their offices and showing them your plan, because the truth is politicians work for you. If you don't give them a plan on what their jobs are, they won't do anything.
So we need to put pressure on Ozma Malik, Norm DePasquale.
Might not even be pressure, just they might not know the opportunity that they're looking for.
Yes, and that's where
See,
you
the
have.
security just drove by there too, right? You see them, they're watching us. You know?
And we will continue to civilly disobey.
Just by what an excellent protest it is to have a good day at the beach.
Yeah.
Could
And
you
that's the
have a
thing,
better?
it's working class civil disobedience is really just taking up space. We need to take up space more often, and it has to move beyond like building awareness. People actually have to play in the water. You can't build appreciation unless people interact with the subject. So,
Yeah.
that being said, I gotta go back to work, but I'll take your last question.
Yeah, just about regeneration, barricades to the beach, and children, and the idea of a pod for outdoor education. How can we make that happen? How can we bring kids, that don't get the chance? Do we connect with communities, community organizations? How can we break down those barriers?
I, as a former politician, treat everything like a campaign. You're trying to win hearts and minds, knock doors, fundraise, put aside a trust to have buses come, and really just work with the community to set up days where they can escape their home life and see this. A lot of us don't realize we don't have to go far to have a vacation. It's really a matter of being able to actually use Toronto's spaces. And a lot of Toronto's spaces are really blocked by a lack of knowledge. We don't know how connected our ravine system is unless someone takes us on a walk of the ravine system. And this is where it's really important to become a politician for your issue. Do not wait for the elected to tell you what's important. You already know. It's a matter of you taking up the political suit and running your own campaign, because this is a campaign. It's a matter of you winning votes now to force public opinion to be on your side. And that's all I've ever did. And I did it with $2,000, and I got it across the city. So this is why I'm constantly encouraging people to not really see me as the politician. See me as like a hacker. I just hacked the system and I just tried something. The only reason people gravitate to me is because I'm speaking the truth about something that is universal to all of us. That wins a lot more votes than trying to pit groups against each other.
I love it. That's fantastic. ChloeBrown, the hacker. Like, that is so beautiful. You know, we should be on GitLab, not Facebook.
Honestly, it's one of those things where it's just, if you can have a dinner down here, a movie night, make people realize the therapeutic value of water, how close it is, you'll win a lot more people to protecting this. A lot of us are starting to realize that the public realm is being sold from under us, and we'll have nothing to pass on to our children. Start framing this issue that way. There will be nothing left if you don't fight today.
Yeah, that's an excellent, very, very well said. So we got to get more people down here. We got, in summary, I guess if I had to summarize, this is a matter of national security. We got to reach Stephen at the federal level. We got to get Norm DePasquale and Ozma Malik and all these people, Chris Glover, fighting for real. Get them mobilized to actually do something. We got to treat this as a science. Like, we got to get scientists involved. Track scientists. We got to get people down here having fun in the water. We got to get more children on the water. I got the big water ball too. If any of you want to ride in the water ball.
This is my second time here. I was born and raised in Canada. I remember Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles when they came out. I watched my first, it wasn't in this, I watched something else in IMAX. But I didn't know about this beach, and I'm a native.
How could you not know about
And I looked for a beach. Yeah, well, I didn't know.
My first time coming down here was during the election, and it's because my parents are beach snobs. They're Jamaicans. We have beaches everywhere. This is a very different type of beach for them. And this is what happens when our neighbors don't engage us in changing our minds.
Yeah.
So this is really why it's important to go around and get more people involved in this, because we come from a community of immigrants that come from some of the best beaches in the world. Convince them that this is worth saving.
Yeah.
So it's really a challenge, because it's like, a lot of us don't have a relationship to water because we're inland now. We don't know where our fish come from. We don't know if they're healthy. We don't know if the crab we eat are healthy. So like, get people involved in those questions. They're difficult, but they're worthy. But I gotta go. So sorry, guys.
The other thing that you said.
Thank you. Last remarks, team. I'll let you get them.
Okay, the other thing you said that I found really moving is save the lake, save the entire lake. This is a matter of national security, not just this beach, but the whole lake. This beach is symbolic of the whole lake. It's downtown Toronto's only access to the lake. We've got to really fight for this, because it's really our Great Lakes in general. We're really fighting for national security here, not just one beach.
Yeah, and when you go to Niagara Falls, you see New York, so it's just like, it starts to make sense once you travel a little bit.
Thank you so much for coming, Francie.
Oh, absolutely. Sorry. But anyways, guys.
Thank you for coming.
So many different interesting framings. She is an actor, absolutely.
Genius actor.
Also, I think empathy works on the same level as well, right? How relevant to other people.